Welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way that you never have before, but have always needed. It's time to rewrite the mother code. Hi, and welcome to Rewrite the Mother Code with me, your host, Dr. Gertrude Lyons. Well, I'm going to say good morning because that's what it is for me. It's a Monday morning, end of August. It'll be interesting to see when this one airs, what's happening time-wise. But just thought I haven't been on in a bit, and I just wanted to place myself and kind of what's been happening and say a few things before I introduce my guest, Nelly Alba. So I've just returned from a family reunion in northern Michigan, the Glen Arbor area. So beautiful. Gosh, I just love when I can be in and around so much unadulterated, unaltered beauty, even though there's, actually a fair amount going on up there. But compared to here in Chicago, it's pretty open skies, and it just feels so good to breathe that air and get out and be in and surrounded by Mother Earth, Mother Nature in that way. And then being with family, that's always all the things. And I think for me on this trip, if I were to name one thing that stood out that's particularly related to the podcast, was spending a couple days with my niece who has the first grandchild in the family. Okay, so my grandnephew, I don't know, is that what it's called? Anyway, those particulars about cousins and grandnephews. Anyway, I think I'm a great aunt, which is cool. And it was just so beautiful to see her and the space that she was in that was so calm. And it was so interesting because he is a really calm, chill, happy baby. And I just noticed saying all these words and hearing people say, what a good baby. He's so happy. And, but particularly that good baby thing. When we start using those labels, I think it's tough, but I would definitely want to acknowledge and name just how content he is. And we were all marveling at the fact that we were at a dinner at a restaurant. He's 10 months old. No, not 10 months. He is 13 months old, I think. 13, going probably 14-ish months old. And he was just, rolled with it through the whole dinner, smiling and eating when it was time to eat, sitting in his high chair. And my sister-in-law and I were like, gosh, I feel like most times at restaurants, I was up and about, walking the baby around, and one of us was eating, one of us wasn't. So it was just really nice to see. And I didn't spend a lot of time talking to my niece, but he has already been through. They knew that when he was born, he'd have to go right into surgery and have a really significant surgery. And I think when you go through that as a brand new mom, first time mom, it can go a number of different ways, right? And I just love seeing the way she's taken it, which was just to so appreciate him and just so appreciate the experience and realize a good distinction between the big stuff and not sweating the small stuff. And I've seen situations where coming through a life-threatening thing like that, a mom can react a different way and super hover over a baby, or really just be so worried that still something's going to happen, and you can feel that. And I think the babies feel it too. And I like to think, that this little guy's a reflection just of how open she is and how appreciative and grateful she is. Because that can go the other way too, right? You can be like, well, I'm just so grateful my baby's here. I don't know. I'm just going to not take control or something. I don't know what the right words I'm looking for, but the other side of the spectrum of being like so overly worried. So anyway, I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge her and just appreciate life and appreciate the energy that we bring to the people around us and the difference that makes. Because I think, especially like little ones are barometers for us, barometers for our feelings, barometers for our energy. And, when we take note of it, it matters, and it matters how we are. And it certainly doesn't, and I'm not saying that at all, like our energy can be our emotions, but our emotions that are, fully felt or felt, in the most responsible way that we can. So I wanted to name that, and I just back from that, and has really been on my mind. And we're gonna be with my guest today, Nelly, as I said, from Well Balanced Moms, and I think she'll have a lot to say about this too. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And the other thing that happened, I'm just going to announce this here because I think this will likely is going to air after my fall retreat. But I still want to name that as of yesterday, it's full, and I'm starting a waiting list, and I'm just so excited about that and so grateful. So excited about the women who are going to come and join and us be together, as women who mother in all ways, any and all ways, this fall. So news will be coming out soon about the spring retreat, spring equinox self-mothering. So I'm hoping you grab your spot for that, and we'll get to work together, play together, be together in that way. So here we go. Well, here I am with Nelly Alba. Welcome, Nelly. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation and to be here today.
Yay. Well, I get to share a little bit about the cool work that you're doing, and then we'll have you launch in with, all the good, beautiful details about your journey, and we'll start there. So Nelly is a life balance and mindset coach for working moms. She runs the Working Mom Balanced podcast and an online shop. She also works full-time as a director of a youth after-school nonprofit organization called YDO, and she's mom to two beautiful children under three, two under three. That's a lot. She enjoys conversations about building space, calmness, harmony into everyday life, despite working and growing your family. That inner balance is possible. Yes, it is, isn't it? I love that. Love it. So tell me how you got to be doing, this, and a little bit, go back as far as you like, and just, share with us about you.
Yes, perfect. So, well, my journey is interesting as I jumped into, working mom balance and all that comes with it. But it started back when I began preparing for motherhood. And I decided that, me and my partner were ready to have kids. We wanted to build our family. And at the same time, I've always been a very ambitious, career-driven individual. So I knew that I wanted to build my career at the same time. It was never for me, when I have kids, I want to take some time off. And so I had that coming into this where like, well, I want to continue doing everything all at once, run my business and lead in the nonprofit world and have my kids and just do it all. So I had that big mentality going into motherhood and career building. And so in that process, I did have some hiccups becoming pregnant, and we actually ended up going through IVF with my son after trying for a year plus. And I mentioned that because it's part of where I really was like, I really want to maintain this happy place. Like I was really connected to my son. I didn't want to leave him. And it became a top priority at the same time. And so just fast forward a bit, once I had him, I began going online, and I went on Pinterest, I went on blogs, and I started searching like, how am I going to be able to balance motherhood and working? Because it was something that I wanted to do. And overwhelmingly, I would see a lot of information around, well, it's not possible to create that balance, or it's going to be harder than you think. You're going to be upset all the time. You're going to be triggered. And it was a lot of these negative, I took them as negative expression of what it would be like trying to balance both things. And so I was like, I don't really want to pay attention to this. I'm going to just go into it, see what happens. And once I returned to work at the 12-week mark and I went back to my job, I within a month did become super overwhelmed, super exhausted, super beat. I was very prideful. I didn't want to ask for help. I was bringing my son to work and we would do half a day. So my husband would come and pick him up around 3 o'clock. So I was taking like 3, 4 calls because I'm a director at the nonprofit. And so I was doing calls with my son crying on one side, teething. I was doing it all. And everyone in the outside world was like, you're so amazing. You're a super mom and you're doing great things. So in my mind, as I was hearing these things, I was saying, well, this is what a good mom is. A good mom is someone who is managing all these things and can do it. But I realized that I was also going home, crying, upset, beat, and no one else would see that side. And I was not happy in that place. And that's when it was one specific morning when I had a full breakdown. I remember my son was teething at that time and I had a pile of dishes and I had a big work meeting when I got to work and I had to bring him. And so in that moment, I told myself something has to change. And although these blog posts tell me it's not possible, I'm going to create it. I'm going to figure out how to do it because I've always been able to create my harmony in my place back home. And I'm not doing it now with motherhood and career. And that's really how it started. And I just wrote in the beginning. I did tons of blogging. Started as a blog, writing to moms, and then that evolved to a podcast that I wanted to create. And now I'm creating some coaching memberships where I'm sharing some of that insight of what I'm doing, also providing resources. And it's just been now a trickle down effect of me wanting to share all that I did because this past year and a half since then, my life has completely changed in the way that I feel about it. And I would argue I'm doing more than what I was because I'm not doing so much more, but I feel much more at peace and much more balanced with my life, despite adding more things to my plate.
That's beautiful. Well, first of all, congratulations. Right.
Thanks.
And I love how we hear these things ahead of time, through a lot of the phases of, becoming a mom of kids, right? Like it's where it's going to be hard. And I learned early on in pregnancy that there's more complaining and victimhood than there is, like talking about the good stuff or, not just the good stuff, but, that you can do it. And yeah, it's hard, but, here. So I'm getting the sense. And sometimes maybe it's good to listen to some of that. I chose not to listen to most of it either, right? And just like I gotta try this for myself. I gotta see. And I love that you held that and didn't just be swayed like, okay, well, I guess it's not possible, right? I'm gonna have to figure something out. And then when it was hard, it's like, yeah, well, I guess here I am and this is how it is. But to not settle for that, to not be like, wait, okay, it is like this, I'm hitting a rough spot here and this is hard, but I'm gonna do something about it.
Right. And I think that's the difference, right? I think sometimes if we are caught up in all the things that are not going well or the things people say is not going to be easy, like we automatically, without realizing, we're attracting that energy. And so we're living within that same space with the things that we do. So if you're going to go into it saying it's going to be hard, then you're going to find the hard moments. That's going to be more apparent to you versus focusing your energy on like, well, what is going well? Because I guarantee if you step back, there are some things that are going well. That shift that I had to make for myself is stop coming into it thinking of all the things that are not going well. And a rule of thumb for me was like, for anything negative that comes out, I have to say 2 positives because there's so much good happening. And as you mentioned, it can very easily be put to the side with all you hear, but then all that you feel and how people are telling you to deal with it, because you're going to get a lot of different advice in that process.
Yeah, here. And then to take that and, I just want to acknowledge, okay, I'm going to hear that with with a certain level, and then I'm going to try other things, and then I'm going to share it with other women, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes this happens and it's like, okay, it's just enough. Okay, I figured some things out, and all I can do is that, right?
Yeah.
But you took it a step further and said, well, if I've figured some stuff out, let's get some of that energy out in the airwaves. And well, first, starting with your blog and then podcasts, like, here's some ways to think about it differently. Here are some, things that I did. And now I'm hearing from other moms that they're doing that are working for them. And then we still have to call out what works for us, right? But when we're putting out more of the positive, there's going to be a lot, I'm going to say better, but, you know, more positive ways to look at things and try things and do things. So when you are, well, let me just ask you first, like back then, like what would you say were some of the things that like early on you were seeing, like, oh yeah, this is some of the things that they talked about that were hard. I know one of them was asking for help. It sounds like,
Mhm.
right? Like, oh, I got to do
Yeah.
everything myself. But what can you share a bit more detail about this path that you took when you're like, wow, now I am like doing more than I was before, and I'm more than okay with that. I'm thriving in it.
Right. I think one of the biggest pieces for me was establishing healthy boundaries. And so the boundary piece was one of the pieces to your first point of like what seemed
Yeah.
very overwhelming in the beginning was because I was this super ambitious, overdriven. I'd stay late at the office or I would attend events to make sure I'm socializing and connecting with colleagues and all these different pieces. I had to figure out what's a healthy boundary so that I feel like I am doing my part focused and building quality of life with my kids
Mm,
while also maintaining that healthy, thriving relationship in the workspace the way that I wanted, the way that I envisioned it for myself. Because it's going to look differently for everyone depending on whether or not something I talk about with some of the moms I mentor. If you have a job that what you're looking for is to get out of that job because it's not necessarily what you want to do, but it's what you're doing temporary versus like
mm,
if you built a career and you're building on something that you really are foundational, is what you want to do. And so the boundary piece was really huge for me. And I had to start with really asking myself, what is top priority for me? And what can I do with my time frame? I had to be really realistic, about what
mm-hmm.
was going into my schedule and what deserved or warranted my attention during this season of life. So I also
Yeah.
mentioned about how sometimes there's different things that take priorities or in different seasons. And this is where then you seek out your support team, communication comes in. So you know what to do on the outskirts to help support you, but you need to know what's most important. And I'm saying we, but often as working moms, I talk with my family and with other moms, we have this long, lengthy to-do list. If I ask a mom, like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you have to do? It's super long. And there's always, if you ask them, there could be something else you can add on there.
Of
You know,
course, right.
there's always something. We could fold some laundry, we could be doing the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple things. But it's, where can my attention be focused on the most for my quality of life? And then framing it around that really helped me to figure out what I wanted to focus on. So that goes into where I navigated with the blog and my podcast, where part of my priority was my self-care, me doing something for me so that I can feel that energy, that positivity throughout my day, not just in
Yes.
clips or moments of it. And so the blog, doing this podcast, talking to other moms or talking about
Mm-hmm.
this topic, it's part of what feeds my soul to continue to do the work I'm doing outside of here. And so
Mm-hmm.
you need to focus in on what is going to provide you that internal power, internal happiness, and then how will that look in the outside. And so I'll say this all with it's not easy because
Right.
it's not an easy process and it's not a one and done process. Sometimes it's not like, oh, we're going to find balance. One is not found, it's created, but we are going to create the balance. And it's an ongoing process, which is why I say season of life,
Mm-hmm.
because, right now I'm entering September where my work schedule for the youth program, it's more busy because I'm doing registration. So I'm seeking for my partner to do more of the household things, or I'm doing more grocery deliveries on certain days. So we accommodate according to what's going on and what's needed in the space. So it's not easy. You have to keep going back to it. You have to reset, you have to refocus, but you have to be in tune on your priorities and then how to create those safe boundaries And all that ties into taking care of yourself holistically, because
Mm.
that's what you're going to get to at the bottom of it all.
Yeah, right. That's well, I love there's so much of what you just shared, Nelly, that I'm like, yes. Oh yeah, yeah. I especially love that, yeah, we don't find balance. It's not like something is on the grocery store shelf, right? Oh, I
Right.
found it. Yay, lucky me. Or hidden treasure. You do create it and it takes work. But I think this mindset thing is such a big part of it, right? Because when we hear that word like, oh, it takes work, like, oh, I can barely do what I'm doing. As you were describing the things that you chose to focus on and spend time on are all things that feed you, that nourish you. And it doesn't mean every piece of it. We all, need to do the some of the things that we don't love,
Mhm.
to do the things that we love. But I think there's a lot more room than most of us think about finding other ways for those things to get done, whether it's people or, when I do them or how I go about doing them that can, really make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I know that you're aware that we talked about at the beginning, right? We're just wired with what's going on in our culture about motherhood and the messages. And, in this rewriting the mother code that I'm naming it, it's all of everything that you're talking about. But I'm wondering if you come across or like what are some of the most prominent codes that you had to break, whether it was like family codes or, society culture or family culture codes that were like some of the big ones. And then I'll follow up with asking like women you coach, or you can talk about both.
Yeah. I love this question because there's a lot that you have to break down. And I think a lot with culture does play a huge role in it. I mentioned to you before we pressed record here, I come from a Dominican household. And so I was raised in that culture, and we're very family oriented. We are a culture that you have like multiple people living in the same space, doing the same things. Everyone has to be involved. And one of the biggest piece for me in that was going back to my boundaries, I think a lot of it goes to that, is how can I place certain boundaries where like I can say no to something with my family and it not come off as disrespectful, or like
Mm.
that's supposed to be part of how you parent. You're supposed to let your child stay up late for the party events. You can't say no to the Christmas event even though it might not make the most sense. So I think at the smaller scale for me, there's a lot of we want to do everything together, and there's certain things that I needed to separate and not do together for my own sanity.
And
And
that's not a little thing, by the way. Like
yeah,
those are
yeah.
those are big, big
No, you're
things.
right.
But
It's
that's really big. I don't want to minimize that one, Nelly, because that takes a lot. But keep going. This is
yeah.
great.
No, and you're right. It is a big piece of it, because that is where you can get into conflicts with individuals, or you start having to potentially separate yourself temporarily from someone that maybe is not feeding that positive energy that you need. And that's something that happened to me personally. Like there were certain people that just they weren't at a point to understand all that was going on and what I needed for my family and for myself. And at that moment, I had to separate myself and just have a conversation about that when I was ready. And I
Mm.
also tell someone like it's okay if that's what you need. You can definitely take those moments and do that. And the other piece I just mentioned, I'll elaborate a little bit more on, is the little like eating and what you're putting on your child, or so there, you're gonna get a lot of comments or advice and what people tell.
Unsolicited,
You're
mostly
right.
unsolicited advice. Yeah.
Very much so. And I know, I'm thinking of my wonderful mom who has a lot of advice. I love my mom to death. But sometimes those cultural pieces where she's like, well, I have to keep my mouth shut. Remember, now I have to let you do things as you want to, where they try to impose the way things were before, or what kind of meals I should be giving and at what time. And so I think that's one of the ones I had to break, is just making sure I was intentional but straightforward and communicated my desires. And sometimes your voice can get pushed back for my culture, like the culture that I have,
Mm.
where you're not supposed to talk a certain way to the adults or the certain people in the room. And even though I'm not older than my
Hmm.
grandparents, so certain things that they say has to just go. And I had to break that and say, no, that's not the way that it's going to go, because these are my kids and this is the way things are going right now. And so I think
Hmm.
those are part of just some of the codes I had to break down, the lifestyle piece of things with my kids and becoming a mom. And I was gonna say, and I know with the other piece with working, and since I am someone who's focused on my career, my partner stays at home, and he's a stay-at-home dad, and he takes care of the kids. And oftentimes those roles are reversed. And so a lot of what I had to break down and have conversation around too, that was pointed out by family and or society at times through all the things you would read, is how we can still have a healthy relationship even though I am the one outside making the money and my partner's at home taking care of the kids, and how that dynamic works, and how it doesn't make him as a man anything less, and me as the head of household being a woman and being the one. So a lot of that financial component, who's supposed to be making money, bringing it in, who's supposed to be staying home to take care of the kids before they're off to school, was something else that I had to break down. And again, it came down to communication, and it came down to setting, I set a lot of boundaries for myself.
Yeah, I'm loving hearing that. Right.
And it's the best way to do it for your own fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, what I realized is that this is like my life to live. I'm the one that's going to look back 5 years from now and say, wow, how was it raising little kids, my toddlers running around, and also building a career? And I always think to like future Nelly sitting in her rocking chair saying, wow, this is the life that I built and that I did. And I did it in a way that I feel good about. And when that picture comes into mind, when I visualize that very deeply, it's very easy to set the boundaries and to say the no's and to put my foot down where I feel it's appropriate, in a respectful but straightforward way to the whom I think it needs to be told to.
Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat, getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat. I love all of that, Nelly, and underlining, because what I heard, especially want to highlight what you just said about picturing that future Nelly, right?
Yeah.
Did you say in a rocking chair?
Yeah, I
Way,
did. I
way.
did
Yeah,
say the
okay,
wrong.
good. No, no, I love that. I love because we don't often like let ourselves think that far ahead and who imagine that woman. And that's when we're really rewriting the
Yeah.
code, right? And creating a vision for ourselves. Because if I don't have that, I don't have something to look ahead to or that I'm aspiring to, that's when it's so easy, right? To get caught up in the day to day and and
Yep.
kind of live in some of that angst, like just kind of getting through it versus, whoa, all of this hard work and breaking some of these patterns. And I mean, you've used setting boundaries, and I want to keep talking about that, a number of times. But there's also something that you said. So we have vision, huge, and kind of knowing what you want, discovering what it is that you need and want, because I think women in general, and then moms, it's like, I don't, if we didn't get it, we don't always know what we should have. We have this
Right.
inkling where we're like, no, it should be different from this. Like I have some thoughts or ideas, but they're not reinforced by family or culture. So it's like, well, those must be wrong. So we just kind of go along with what's there as opposed to, how do I meet some of my deeper yearnings, and then those are tied to my vision. I feel like that's what you're describing. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
That's 100% accurate. And the first phase in the framework that I teach and that I coach through is that self-awareness first stage, which is the self-discovery, which is the question
Mm-hmm.
asking, because it's the first part we often overlook because we want to get straight to the like, how is things going to be different? But if you don't
Right.
know
The
what
doing.
you're right, but if you don't know what exactly, or you think you know, but without you stopping to really analyze, what you actually might be saying is what you think your partner wants, what you think your family wants, what you think society thinks they want you to want.
Yep.
When you actually stop and you actually take the time to be quiet with yourself and ask yourself, like, without anyone's opinions or thoughts, how would you answer this? What would you want to see? As crazy as it might sound, that you might think sounds crazy. Because sometimes they'd be like, well, that's not going to be possible. So I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
Like, leave out the impossible. What was that look like? And that's when I feel like you get to the root of it and you start to say, okay, well, this is what I want. This is what's going to bring me joy and happiness and
Mm-hmm.
harmony. And then how do I balance that all and create it all with the life that I have right now? And
Yeah.
so self-awareness stage is so, so crucial. And again, it's asking yourself, I do this every morning, like, what do you need? What do you need today? How do you feel today? What's going to help you feel good? Right. And starting off just by asking yourself those questions can be so powerful and can really make a difference in your mood and your attitude, as simple as that from early on. So you do have to take the time though to really dig deep into those questions and make sure you're aware of what are those limiting beliefs, what are those self-sabotaging behavior that you're without realizing embodying, and
Mm-hmm.
break those up so that then you can create that reality that you truly want in this 3D form. Then that's where the visualizing, what are those values, what do you envision, and then you work through creating your goals from there and take your action, the next step.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you need to know what it is, and you need to know what it is without anyone else's opinion. And that was
Exactly.
the biggest piece for me. And
Was it?
yeah, because it's so easy to hear opinions about motherhood, about how you should live your life, about how you should be working or not working. If you work, it's this problem. If you don't work, it's this other problem. And and with social media now, which I love because I use social media, but there's just
Mm-hmm.
so much information that sometimes it's hard to know what's your own original thought and what's your own original feeling, and then trust that, and then go from there to figure it out with support, with coach, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But really understand what you need and what you want, and base that to create the life you want, not what somebody else is prescribing for you.
Yeah, I'm picturing as you're saying that, and I love how you laid out the process, Nelly, is, those voices will always be there. But we want our voice to get bigger and bigger, right? We want our voice to become the dominant one or the one that assesses, some of these.
Yeah.
Because as you're saying, it's not about tuning everyone and everything else out or acting like nobody has anything to say of value. But until we're more clear on what our needs are, like you said, what our desires, what our deeper desires, and what our vision is, we're just going to get bounced around, right? We're just going to get like tossed about and wonder and doubt. And because it's not like you still don't doubt the choice that you made, but you're just more aware that it's your choice, right? And you're taking ownership of it. And I think sometimes that happens for women, moms in particular, where it's like, I just want somebody to tell me what to do. Like that, and in those moments of overwhelm and that, can someone just, all right, that sounds kind of good. All right, I'll do that. Right. And then, all right, well, no, that didn't work. But this really is claiming ownership and taking responsibility for your life, your experience, how you want this to go. So I love that. And I'm going back, I'm thinking about this choice point. Like, was that something you and your partner decided before you had children? Like, this is the setup that we think we want. I'll work and you'll take some time off, or because that's a big culture code, family code to break into. So and I haven't really addressed that one much. So I'd love to hear your thoughts
Yeah.
on that.
So this was something we spoke about. I am a very, like, even relationship, I'm very upfront. I want to have these conversations, but then I also say I take it with flexibility. The same thing I do with everything. So you have an idea, a goal, what you want to do, and then there's flexible pieces, especially with parenting and
Yes.
motherhood. But yeah, we had this conversation. We didn't establish whether he was going to do something part-time.
Yeah.
So there was some gray area within that. We knew that there would be conversation around with family putting their thoughts into our situation, but we honestly wanted to come back to what made the most sense for us. All the nitty of like who has insurance and who's working.
Oh, yeah.
And so all those little pieces we kind of broke down and said what made the most sense. And my partner was also a pro MMA fighter, and so his job was much more flexible because he moves from
He could decide.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was much easier to make a decision that way. What we did need to be clear on was whether or not he was comfortable being full-time at home with the kids, and how he would have some of like him time. Because I know those can play a role in how someone feels being in that situation. And so we've done a much better job at establishing that. I know in the beginning it was a lot of communication, a lot of talking, a lot of seeing what made the most sense. That's why my son went to work with me for half the day in the beginning. So at the start of it, my son would go, and he did have a part-time job. And then partway through having the part-time job, it didn't make sense for him to continue, for us to pay someone else to take care of our kids versus us. And we always wanted to have that. So yeah, we did have a conversation in the beginning, but it definitely took a lot of like going back to that conversation at least every single month.
Sure.
That makes the most sense until we had a better established schedule and routine. And then my mornings are much more flexible with my full-time job too, since I work after school hours. So it made a ton of sense that way. So it wasn't too difficult for us on our end because he was very open to it. So I think it would be very different if you go into it with both parties wanting to work, or wanting to both stay, whatever the case may be, that you're going to have different conversations, and that's where you just have to communicate, be clear, so that you don't end up in a situation where then your energy is being fed off at home,
Sure,
resenting or not liking a certain situation. But yeah, that's what worked best for us, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing a lot of communicating, a lot of conversations. It's not, let's try this, and then things change, right? Like being flexible, continuing to kind of assess how it's going. So both of you are satisfied, right? And doing it in the way you're doing. And I will say I was a little distracted thinking about your MMA fighter husband, stay at home dad. It's just really sweet,
He's amazing. To that point, I will say, like, there was a point that I noticed that he wouldn't vocalize about. He was not necessarily happy with the setup. the way things
Mm,
are going. So I say be in tune with each other. And I think it just, he needed certain time frames to go and like go to the gym or other. So that's why I said like you pay attention to cues, um,
sure.
because especially if you're in a relationship and that's part of the balance. You want to have the home balance, and that takes the both parties to be happy and feel fulfilled.
Mm,
So yes, I talk a lot about self-care and about your own personal happiness, but in unison, when you're in the home and working with kids, a big part is that communication aspect with your partner or whomever is
right.
that you're raising your kids with, because there is in that case there is two individuals that also want to feel fulfilled in different ways too.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I lost my train of thought because I loved what you were just saying because I was thinking about all the codes he has to break, and you guys are charting, you two are charting new territory, right? And it's certainly more common than it used to be even 10 years ago, but 20, 30 years ago, where, almost never happened, right? That this is so, the two of you and your partnership being really strong and aligned is such a key factor, besides the fact that you're modeling that for your children, right? And
Right.
one, it works. And then two, they're learning about relationship, through the two of you. And I just think you're painting such a beautiful picture. And I don't mean beautiful like it's like, woo, fairy tale beautiful, but real and beautiful. And we talk, and this is how it gets done. And you can create, family lots of different ways. And there aren't these cookie cutter, just one or two ways to do this. And you're doing it as you're, sharing and supporting others. So I love that.
Leading by example, as I say, you show it. And
Yeah.
my hope always with my kids is that they have different avenues in front of them, that they can see the different pathways and then make a decision for themselves in that way. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing I live by with all that I teach and all that I do, is be aware of all that's around you and then know how to come back to yourself to make the decision that makes the most sense to you. But be
Yeah.
aware, have the resources, know the techniques, know the tools, and then come back to what you need, and what makes the
Yeah.
most sense for you.
I think everything we're talking about is when we talk about self-care, for moms or caregivers, that this process, this journey and taking it on as a journey and learning from it, learning about yourself, learning, and growing with your children is so much, where I know we're both like writing
Yeah.
that, and how important that is. And it's, this is seeing it differently than just like this job we have to get done. It's an integral part of our life. It's this beautiful, like rich treasure trove of healing and growing and all of that goes on. I also then wondered, like, was there anything you want to mention about any other ways to help manage stress and burnout? Just to name a couple, just to, because this is a process we're talking about, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's always nice to have a couple like kind of immediate go-tos
Yeah.
in that regard.
Okay, no worries. And I'm sorry. I hope that you don't hear in the background. I hear my son running down there.
No, I actually I don't, but if we
Okay,
hear them,
perfect.
great. If we hear them, great.
But with stress management and tools to create balance, there's a couple of different things that I would suggest. I mentioned one. Well, let me back up. First, I think that with tools that you can use, it does lie around self-care, and I think about it holistically in mind, body, and soul. So, what are those type of tools that you can use to nurture those different buckets or these different areas of self-care? And so one of those techniques is expressing gratitude, going outdoors, and
Yes.
the expression of gratitude. And I highly suggest going outdoors for it. It just doesn't leave any room for any negative energy to be present at the time of you expressing gratitude, which is a positive piece. And so that has been huge, where I just wake up and I go outdoors and I say three things that I'm really grateful for in my life. And that's one of the big ways. Another is just physical movement. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole workout, but
Sure.
that you're moving your body. I like to park, if you drive to work, I like to park in the back parking lot and just take the walk. I also get outdoors at the same time, and
Mhm.
that is very, very positive. Another smaller piece to that is taking the steps somewhere. So
Mm.
just moving your body a little bit can be super helpful and beneficial. And then a third one that I can share here is visualization. We talked a lot about visualizing, but using a lot of different visualization tools and techniques have been so powerful, whether that's affirmations that you listen to related to visualization, or if you do what I love, which is a visualization walk, where at least every quarter in the year, I go
Mm.
for a extensive walk and I literally visualize my life 1 year plus from there. Um,
Nice.
and I always say, but when you're doing this, do it from like the smallest of details to the biggest of details. So from like the clothes you're wearing to the car you're driving to who's dropping off your kids at school, who's picking them up, who's making breakfast, are you ordering, are you, and that in itself helps you to understand also the lifestyle and the life that you generally want to live
Yeah.
that you may not have vocalized before that. And you start to picture it in your head and then you take inspired action from there. That has been so powerful. And it leads to this bigger picture of stress management
Mm-hmm.
because of how you're putting room for positivity and a growth mindset and a positive mindset. And being able to reduce like the stresses that might come later on. So I say it's like prevention, like preventing those bigger stresses to hit. You do some of these softer tools to
Sure.
get there.
Yeah, and small steps lead to big change, right?
Yes.
And these aren't just nice things. These are I know everything you're sharing. They're powerful. They're proven
Yes.
things. Like the when you were talking about when you vision as detailed as possible. That rewires our brain. Like our brain can now have something to access that can make it feels real, and it isn't just this like idea you're throwing at your brain that's going to say no, 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 no.
Yeah.
You're breaking it down, and I think all of that is so powerful. And I always like to say, and you know, for those of us that need a little more reassurance that these aren't just good ideas, this is research based, evidence based practices that work,
Mhm.
that really do work for us. Well, I'm loving everything that we're talking about. And as much as I'd love to be able to address like 10 more things, because it's just really lovely to talk to, Nelly. And doing such big, important work. It's so important. So, so important. How can people find you and get to know and learn more about, you and what you're doing, and discover more about Balanced Mom? Go
Yes,
ahead.
awesome. Yeah. So you can find me. I'm most active over on Instagram where I share a lot of my daily inspirational pieces, and that's at Working Mom Balanced. And I also have a website, workingmombalance.com, and that has all my different resources and links, podcasts you can find on there as well, and any kind of resources that might be helpful or beneficial to you, as well as the link to my mom shop that has a bunch of different digital products and things that might be helpful. I'll also share with your audience a free clarity journal that I have. I talked a lot about those question asking pieces. And so I
Yeah.
put together a list of like 30 main questions to ask at the beginning phase of your journey to help you gain clarity as to what you need and what's holding you back and what's keeping you stuck. So I'll also share that there so your audience can get that as well.
Beautiful. Well, these will also be in the show notes. So, weren't somewhere where you could jot that right down or remember, take a look at the show notes. Also, lastly, I always ask all my guests this one last question is what does rewrite the mother code mean to you?
I love that. Rewriting the mother code means you are creating the life that you desire as a
Mm.
mom and whatever other identities that you have, and you are creating the life that you desire by your design, in your terms, in your season of life, despite what others might say or advise you to do. So creating your life your way.
Oh, here, here. That's right on. And this isn't a test question. It's because I
Yeah.
just love hearing everybody's kind of, it's just been so beautiful, over time to hear the similarities, but also the personal, what it means to you personally. So that means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nelly. I wish you just so much. I'm so grateful you're doing what you're doing. I hope tons of women, mothers, find you and get to work with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to have been here.
I love that episode. I love Nelly. And sometimes I think I should just keep recording for our like post conversations because they're the same but a little different, just a little more just being with each other. But I was telling her that I haven't thought so much about like, what men specifically when they make the choice to be the stay-at-home caregiver or more the full-time caregiver, what resources do they have? Like we're, just getting started having more thoughtful, more, deeper ways to do this job and ways to be in it and look at it. And I was saying, I'm sure there's some things out there. I haven't looked myself, but I'm sure there are, but I'm sure there could be a lot more. And having someone like her husband who's, kind of would appeal, I would think she agreed with me, but, more kind of a guy's guy. He's a fighter and, getting on talking about, what his journey's been like and talking. So I think that's really beautiful. And it did end up tying, I didn't think about it ahead of time, but when I shared at the beginning before Nelly got on about being a great aunt and watching, my niece and her new son, navigate life together and was really inspired about their way of being because sometimes, life throws us something that we have to take account where we have to like really look at our values, look at what's really meaningful in this journey. And as I'm becoming a new mom and, having a child go through something so significant kind of throws it at you, whether you like it or not. And it's still our choice to do with it what we will. And I feel like, she has built a vision, for herself, for their family, of one of really focusing on what matters and, their health and relationship and being together and valuing and being so grateful. And Nelly's talked about gratitude as a practice. And I was thinking about it through the episode as well, just how powerful a grateful gratitude space is in our psyche, in our atmosphere. And then when we're in it, it has a ripple effect. It touches others. And we all felt it this weekend. And I felt it, being with Nelly today. So I guess it's, maybe we'll end there with like, take time today to, as she said, go outside and name some things you're grateful for. I did that this morning and it set the tone for my day that felt really, really good. So do that, be in that. I know I am grateful for any and everyone who connects with me and finds me however they find me, whether you're listening to this podcast and then, takes a next step to sign up for my newsletter and my email list where I share things, just in written form, in addition to this beautiful podcast forum. So I invite you to do that. And you can do that at my website, on my website, www.dr Gertrude, Gertrude, Lyons, Lyons, drgertrudelyons.com. Also the same thing on Instagram. You can find and find your way to me and sign up. I love having more and more ways to connect and us be together in this conversation and on this journey of mothering, self-mothering, the power of mother, in our lives, in our world. So have a blessed, blessed day. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to Rewrite the Mother Code. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included, to find it. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons. or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll see you next time.